Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Orr, and I'm the Executive Director of UK and Ireland Spill Association. And we are running a series of webinars. It's the winter, so people all want to get webinars done, and we are really keen to get our webinars going again. This is going to be a stunning webinar. It's based out of a talk that I heard Ines do at Interspill last April, but it deserves a wider hearing. So we're very grateful to have Ines Costa, who is with us because she gave a great talk at Interspill. And in this talk, we want you to participate with her to make the webinar as interactive as we can. So a little bit about UK Spill. We are a trade body for marine and inland response companies in the United Kingdom, and we have a very active membership, and we have also which many of you will have seen some of the members talk in the webinars that we've held before. We also have an accreditation company, International Spill Accreditation, which accredits inland oil and chemical inland companies who deal with oil and chemical spills. And for the marine companies, we also accredit companies who do marine spill response. And somebody wants to record our recording, but the recording will be available later. So basically, we accredit marine spill response organisations, and we also have a number of working groups. And in a sense, this is a hybrid between the Marine and Manufacturers Working Group, but also our Employment Opportunities Working Group. So a little bit about our Employment Opportunities Working Group. Members of this group span the competencies within our industry and is a mix of those who manufacture, consult, respond and lead the industry, whose greatest resource is its people. And there's quite a lot of focus in the association at the moment about its people and helping them to develop competence and all the rest of it, particularly as we enter a period where the change in risk prompted by the transition to less polluting fuels is going to put greater pressure on responders. At one hand, we're dealing with spills, traditional sources of spills, primarily 100% hydrocarbon spills. We're now in an era where we're expected to respond to very low sulfur fuel oil spills of very low sulfur fuel oil, and we in time will migrate to very low sulfur fuel oil or marine diesel being mixed with vegetable oils or ethanol to reduce the emissions from it. And also we're prepare for spills from methanol, possibly incidents involving vessels which are propelled by liquid natural gas and other emerging fuel products. So we are in a really interesting time at the moment, and it poses challenges. I think the industry is able to cope with them, but we cope with them by collaborating, talking with each other, working together on solutions. And the other issue we have is, how do you maintain competence through this? You don't have real exercises going on, real incidents going on all the time. And actually, fortunately, incidents at sea are rare, and they're often the result of human error. And on the inland side, the incidents are less so, but they tend to be bigger and they tend to be more complex. So the question that we're posing we're always asking ourselves is, how do we maintain competence when there are less opportunities to deploy and practice your skills for real? And so you may have heard us Ines and I talking before we started, and we are trying to make exercises more realistic. And on the right, the picture on the right is an exercise that that ourselves and IPECA hosted, which was specifically about alternative fuels. And in this desktop exercise, which was aimed, we had about 38 people from different parts of the UK incident response world. So we had people, regulators, we had ship to ship transferers, we had salvors, we had ship owners, we had responders. It was a whole mixed bag of people, including people like ITOF were there, OSRL obviously were there, Ambipar were there. It was a good opportunity for all, and Adrenaline, it was a very good opportunity for all of us to try to get our heads around how do you deal with an alternative fuels incident. And I think to start with, we were pretty poor. But by the second day, we were pretty good. We felt that we had the competence of the people in the room to deal with these incidents. And it gave us confidence. And the confidence came by all working together to solve the problems that would arise. And the beauty about this exercise, which was run by Sea Alarm, was the exercise managers had the ability to change the risk aspect of it, of the original incident, by rolling cards. And it was a very good game that we played. And it did actually, we felt it put us under a bit of pressure. We really had to think and we had to consult, and we needed the ship to ship transfer guy to contribute. And we we needed people to work together to evolve the solution. And sometimes I go on an exercise, and I do ones with our local resilience forum here and the strategic coordinating group here, and they always seem to be the same. We as participants aren't being put under pressure, and we seem to be playing a game to get a tick in the box. And actually what we need is to make exercises as realistic as we can. And the question that I'm asking myself is, how do we make AI make it more real? And that's why I've turned to Ines, because she's pretty cool at this stuff. So Ines is a digital marketing specialist. She's driving digital transformation at OSRL. She explores AI, automation, and gamification to enhance exercise design and delivery. And with a background in design and business development, she leverages emerging technologies to optimize engagement and crisis preparation in oil spill response. So please, we want you to participate. So do participate when you're asked to participate. Your votes in this count. So do get involved. So I'm going to stop sharing, and stop talking, and hand over to Ines, who knows a lot more about this than I do. So Ines, it's over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm just clicking here to share my screen real quick. Alrighty. Hopefully everyone, you can see my screen fine.
Not yet. No, not yet. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Just make it big. That's
Yeah,
it. Go for it.
amazing. Okay, cool. First of all, thank you so much to everyone that joined in today in this rainy afternoon, at least here where I am. And thank you so much, Mark, for the lovely introduction and also for inviting me to do this. As you mentioned, this talk is really a follow-up from what I did at Interspill, where I got to present a little bit on the work that OSRL has been doing when it comes to using AI in our exercises. And obviously this was back in April, and as you might have noticed with AI, everything moves very, very quickly. You can never really catch up with what is going on. So I think now that we're in November, there's quite a few bits to update on that too. So I'll give you the basics of what's going on and then introduce a few new topics there. But yeah, like Mark mentioned, we're asking for your participation because there are a few slides here where I ask you to help me choose. I decided to introduce a little element of branching, like a live presentation kind of thing. So yeah, when I do ask you, you can just drop your answer in the chat and I'll have a look. And Mark is going to keep an eye on the chat for me, if that's okay. And we can take it from there. But I would like Mark mentioned, I come from the background in marketing, but at the moment I'm supporting more our preparedness department. And this felt like a really safe space to start exploring AI applications, because as Mark mentioned as well, if we are noticing less incidents, we're experiencing less incidents, there's a real opportunity here to utilize preparedness to keep up the capabilities of the people in our industry, especially our responders. So we felt like preparedness was not only a safer place to experiment with these capabilities, but also a really crucial one, a one that really matters. So just to get you started with the AI side of things, this is the basics of how AI works, just to give everyone an idea. This is a very simplified explanation of it, but basically, when we're talking about the big buzz of AI, we're talking about generative AI. So automation is already something that's been there for a long time, with computers and everything. But now we're talking about a type of artificial intelligence that really mimics almost the human brain and the human thought process. There's an element of memory, an element of learning, which is really exciting. So, but the basics of how it works is that you take your inputs, your sources of knowledge, so your documents, your SharePoint, whatever it is that you have, your sources of knowledge, your website, and then you have your rules, the instructions that you give to your tool. So what the large language model, your AI tool does is it cross-references everything, analyzes it, and can analyze big sets of data, and that's what makes it so useful, and basically gives you an output based on that. So what is really important to understand here and why I think it's relevant to talk about this is because this directly shows you the rule number one of AI, which is garbage in, garbage out, right? So if your inputs and your prompt, your rules, the way that you communicate and what you give to the tool is not of good quality, your output is going to also have bad quality. And I think what I've heard from a lot of people, especially in the beginning stages of utilizing an AI tool, doesn't matter if it's Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever it is that, they had a pretty bad prompt, just like a one sentence prompt that was not specific at all. And then the output was below average, and their reaction was, why should I bother to do this? I can do better writing it myself. So there's definitely an element of like changing our mindset and almost like adapting how we communicate to the tool to get the best out of it. But it's quite cool because once you put that initial effort in of learning how to communicate with it, then because it has memory and it learns from the more you put and the more good examples and the more feedback you give, it learns and it adapts and it grows. And it becomes easier and easier to use, and the output becomes better and better. So once you start thinking of the possibilities that that brings you, it is quite exciting. Yeah, and that's why everyone's using it. So if you haven't really caught up with it yet, that's fine. There's time, but it's being used in pretty much everything, from little everyday things like going on your phone and on your TV and on your fridge, apparently, but also in the oil and gas industry. Obviously, with so many possibilities, where it already has, all the major operations looking at how AI can be leveraged for operations, right? AI has also been identified to have some really good positive uses in medicine and in emergency response, for example. So there's almost endless possibilities on how you can use it. So I think what we thought was, well, if you can use it in all these things, why not use it in exercises? And I think your question could be, okay, but why use it in exercises? Why start there? So as I mentioned, preparedness feels like a safer space to experiment with new technology. But also because what the example that Mark was just giving about, doing exercises that maybe don't feel as impactful, as real, or maybe that, the pressure doesn't really build up and you don't get to truly feel like you were tested. That's what we were understanding as well about just exercises in general, people were showing up with the same old injects, the same repetitive scenarios, the same scripts that been used and reused over and over again, a PowerPoint with some information and a map. And even to do those, to try to create something that reflected a new scenario or, the specificities of a specific like region, operation, whatever it is, the moment you want to customize it a little bit more, it becomes such a labor-intensive operation just to design it because there's so much that goes into it, so much data that you have to analyze, so many little details that you have to take into consideration. So if you don't do all of those things and you try to just go with the easier to do, like scripted generic scenario, then it just feels unrealistic. So it's almost like you can never win, right? And you start seeing low engagement, you start seeing if you're spending all this money and all this time in doing an exercise, but people weren't really engaging and weren't learning much, that really means just low return on investment. What is the point, from a management perception? And if you didn't feel the pressure, if you didn't truly get tested, the reality is that you didn't learn much and you don't take anything forward to improve, to do better next time. So yeah, the same old boring exercises weren't working out. So we thought, why not take AI to try and change the things that we feel like aren't working and see what happens. So this feels very, easy to just say, oh, we just went ahead and did it, but it wasn't really like that. Definitely took, we're talking about over a year of research and experimentation and trying different things until we found a few formulas that worked for us at OSRL and that had good feedback from our clients and from our staff, the people using it and implementing it in their projects. Um, all right, we get to the first interactive bit. How exciting. So today here in our webinar, we are Aurora Energy, but I'm giving you the option to select if you want to be a shipping company, an oil terminal, or an offshore wind operator. So if you want to just go ahead and pop in the chat which one you want to be, doesn't matter, whatever you want, and I'll just go with majority wins kind of thing. Mark, I'll let you tell me
Oh God,
who's
we've got
winning.
quite a lot. Oh, we shipping's in the lead at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, that
I see
wind,
the numbers here.
one wind. The rest are shipping. Someone's
Shipping.
actually shopping as well.
Ah, perfect. Yeah. It's the Christmas time is in everyone's mind.
Yeah, absolutely. As an oil terminal,
Cool.
offshore wind. I'm sorry to say that shipping is definitely the winner here.
Okay, we go with shipping
Yeah, we'll
then.
go with shipping. Right,
All
we're
right,
going
I'll
with
click on
shipping.
shipping.
Thank you for voting.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you for interacting. And yeah, I'm gonna lock in shipping. There we go. Okay, don't forget, we selected shipping. We're gonna sit on it for a bit and we come back to it. Okay. So I was telling you about how we decided to start experimenting and using AI for exercises. So the first stage of it where we were using it was in the design and planning side of things. So like I was telling you, if you don't want to use the same generic, repetitive script, and if you want to make it a bit more customized, there's so much that you have to take into consideration. So if a massive part of what AI and large language models are, is to take big sets of data and cross-reference it against your instructions. Well, that's literally what you wanted to do with design, isn't it? So that's what we decided to do. Now we grab our sources of knowledge, which if we're doing an exercise for a client, they would be the plans that they have for their response plans, their operational plans, all the technical specifics behind their operations, information about that specific asset, the processes on how they work, even their teams, who's in the team and who does what. So we grab all of that. We also take their history, both what was learned from past exercises, but also any incidents they might have had in the past, any operational risks that are specific to that site. We also have conversations with them about what their goals are, their exercise objectives, but also like strategic goals, like why are you exercising this now? What is the longer term goal? And finally, we take into consideration the specifics of the place that we are exercising in. So local legislation, regulatory requirements, but even, if we're talking crisis management, we are even taking into consideration how the media is in that specific location to try and reflect it in the exercise too. So this is like a lot. This is a lot of data that we're talking about. So if we were doing it in a traditional way, we would need quite a big team, people with very diverse knowledge, specialists with quite a bit of experience to go through large data, going through all these documents, and then try to put it all into a scenario that makes sense, right? So what we do is we use these large language models to say, dump all the information in. This is all we have on our client. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is what we're trying to test. We have a 1 day to run this exercise. You know, give us the highlights of what we should know to run this. And it basically just like compares all this information. It finds the patterns of maybe something that doesn't work very well that needs to be tested again. It finds the gaps in knowledge, the gaps in capabilities that need to be tested and highlighted, and just allows us to really build a scenario that makes sense for our client, that it isn't like this repetitive, over and over generic kind of scenario. And it feels so customized, it feels so personalized, and it really makes a difference when you are playing a scenario that feels like it's really for your operations, that feels real. So I think when we're talking about the design side of things, it really helps to have, instead of having a massive team of specialists and all these different things, now we can work with a more flexible, more agile kind of team where you have a mix of tech savvy people who know how to operate all of these systems and are AI literate to be able to use all of this, and then pair it with people with a bit more experience out in the field, more experience running exercises, and you can use those two to kind of balance each other out and support in creating something that makes sense, that is really well created, and then it also actually translates well in real life when you deliver the exercise. So yeah, we found that this saves quite a lot of time and makes things a lot easier to process, really. Cool. Okay, we go to the second question, guys. Now we know that we are a shipping company. Are we in Brazil or are we in Malaysia? I know a bit random places, but this is what came to my mind. So,
It's a closer vote.
oof. Oh no, we're divided.
If we're divided, I think we're going for Brazil.
Okay, I like Brazil. Let's do it. Cool. Okay, guys, I'm locking in Brazil. So shipping, Brazil. All right. Now we did the planning, we did the design. Now we go to the delivery side of things. And this is my favorite part personally, coming from a design background and, doing marketing and all of this. I quite like the visuals of it. But what I found is that for the delivery side of things, AI is quite useful to create injects, particularly visual injects. I think any of you who've done exercises in the past have experienced email injects, phone calls, or like Mark was telling earlier about someone just standing up and reading from a paper kind of thing. So I think we all maybe experienced those before. What we can create with AI is realistic images that kind of show the participants a scenario, something that's never happened before, but you can basically create an image of the port that they work at suddenly having a massive ship like a tanker going down, or a massive fire, massive explosion, something that's never happened before, but then you can give them that visual, which, at first might sound like, "Oh, okay, that's cool, but what value does it add?" And I have to say that it really being able to give participants a visual of the scenario really helps the whole exercise feel a bit more immersive, more realistic, like you are living it because you are seeing it. And we as human beings, even if we don't realize, we are very visual creatures. So having that visual element really does help to bring people in. It grabs their attention, and suddenly the engagement in the room feels completely different. One thing that I think I was telling Mark earlier about, we did an exercise last week, an internal one, something quite small here, to test incident management processes. And the scenario that we went with was actually sort of a ripoff of Jurassic Park, where, systems are down, dinosaurs are on the loose. And it was quite cool because you think, how do you make something like that realistic? It was amazing. The team behind it used AI to create images of this fake island with a fake resort with dinosaur enclosures, and they had videos and images of dinosaurs on the loose, and people could sort of identify where the dinosaur was based on the image. Like, it was really a lot of fun, and you could never make any of those things real before you had these AI capabilities. Or if you did, you had to go to an external contractor, who was specialized in video production, animation, all this sort of stuff. And that would not be cheap. While this, we managed to create all of this with just our own in-house talent, our responders, myself, people like that. So that was quite cool. But you can also use it for the media side of things. So when we're talking crisis management, especially, there's a quite a big element of reputation and managing external opinions, and the media management side of things. So we are now it's much more easy to recreate what the real media inject would look like, from news reports to social media, which is such an important side of things nowadays. And we're not just talking about recreating the looks of it like you see on the screen, but also recreating the volume. Because, in a traditional scenario, you might have one phone call, one media inject, like manageable volumes like that. But if it was in real life, your media team might be handling like hundreds and thousands of social media posts, trending things that are really like um, creating a narrative online that needs to be managed by your team, for example. So this is something that now can be created with AI instead of having to go manually and creating all of these that would take so much time. With AI, you can literally tell ChatGPT, here's my base post or my scenario, create 100 different posts that mimic this public feeling, for example. And it will just create it for you in a few minutes. Obviously, you go through them and see if they're okay, but that's the idea behind it. I think another really important element of this is the fact that you can adapt injects in real time too. So, for example, imagine you have a 2-day exercise, and on day one, the team participating, like you had your script, everything ready, loads of injects, amazing things ready to go. And on day one, the participants decide to have the most crazy decision that completely goes in a direction that you did not plan for at all, and that does not reflect it in your script, obviously. But, before you would have to go manually and try to change everything if you wanted to, be reactive like that. Or you just stick to the script and you say, yeah, I know you did that, but never mind about that. What we can do now is actually very easily go back to our AI agent and say, listen, this happened. I want to change the next 30 index that I have to include this new information or to reflect this change of what happened. And again, it will do it for you very easily. So just having that flexibility, again, adds to the realism of the exercise. It makes the participants feel like every decision matters because it is directly reflected in the scenario in the index that they're playing. And it just, as a delivery team, it also allows you to be much more focused on the participants, much more focused on what's going on in the room, rather than being behind the computer, clicking away, trying to change things last minute. So yeah, that's quite a good one. I'm gonna go now to our last question, guys. So what type of emergency did we have? What was the incident? Was it a spill caused by a natural disaster or a cyber attack that led to the loss of control of our operations? Please go ahead.
We're pretty split between cyber and spill.
Okay.
I think cyber. I think
Cyber.
cyber's going
Cool.
to win it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty hot topic, I would say. I actually will
Mm.
talk about that a bit later on, so I think it's appropriate. Um, so I was just going on about like how, we create this scenario that's realistic and changes with people's choices. Well, the questions that I've been asking you so far are to exemplify exactly that. So we are a shipping company in Brazil that suffered a cyber attack that led to the loss of control of our operations. So let's see what our inject has to say about that.
Boa noite e bem-vindo às notícias BBC. Iniciamos com uma notícia de última hora. Um grande operador de transporte marítimo confirmou um ataque cibernético em larga escala em suas operações costeiras. Os sistemas que controlam a navegação e o carregamento das embarcações foram comprometidos, levando à paralisação total do porto. A agência Aurora enviou sua equipe de resposta cibernética enquanto as investigações tentam rastrear a origem da invasão. Relatos iniciais indicam que as cadeias logísticas da região podem ter sido afetadas. Voltaremos em breve com mais atualizações.
Cool. There we go. So, I think that kind of showcases a little bit what can be done with it. Creating a news report that looks like BBC, that has an avatar speaking, saying words that, were decided based on the decisions that you guys just made here in the chat. So yeah, that's kind of like the power of the index that you can create. It's the power of that dynamic, realistic exercise. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing a little demo of it, like firsthand kind of thing. And in case you're wondering, like, it's not just a cool video. Because when I started creating those, I was a bit like, is this just a cool video that I'm making? It's just fun to look at, but what's the real impact? And then we went to a client. This was already last year. We went to a client where we did exactly this. We showed them and this was actually a client where we used a news report that was mimicking the national news there. So it felt quite specific to the region. And it was a crisis management. And in this exercise, we did a news report where the journalist was being so tough on the company, saying that they were negligent, that the CEO didn't know what they were doing, that the company was going to lose millions of pounds because of what just happened. And, up until then, the room felt very confident. They were doing crisis management exercise and even though things weren't going great, they were the most confident team ever. After seeing a news report that looked like a real news report, saying all these things about the company and really showcasing the negative public perception that the incident was creating of the company, the mood in the room changed completely. And the CEO himself was like, right, guys, let's get to work. We need to fix this. We need to get ahead. And the impact of it is just, it moves people in a way that a PowerPoint slide just can't. I don't know how to explain. But yeah, there's some real benefit to it. And what you also saw was the language side of things. So another bit that I think AI has a lot of impact in is the language side, where we can really translate and dub anything into any language that you can imagine. So those language barriers when you're working in different regions are really so much easier to overcome that nowadays. Whenever I create content for exercises in different regions, I create in English, but then I also create in the local language. And it's just so much more accessible, when you go out to a different country. Thank you so much for participating. That's the end of my questions for the crowd for now. So thank you so much for giving your feedback and making the choices. So now that we went through the delivery, just going to touch a little bit on the reporting too. When we get to the end of the exercise, it's quite easy for everyone to just be like, right, we're done with the exercise, walk away. And then sometimes the reports can take quite a long time to make. So by then, people kind of already forgot about it. If we're going to be honest, people move on to the next project and the learnings sometimes aren't really taken forward. So what we found is that we apply the same logic of basic AI and of the planning and apply it to the reporting. So you take all the observations from the evaluators, which if you're doing a large scale multi-day exercise can be hundreds of observations really. We take the observations from the SimCell, who many times is recording expected actions versus the reality of the actions from the participant room. And you take also the feedback, how the participants felt, what was the conclusions from the daily debriefs and all this. And you sort of cross-reference it with what the goals of the exercise were, with what you were looking to achieve. And it just allows you to really process all of this, again, large data and identify these are the key learnings. These are the patterns that we kept finding over and over again in all the evaluations. So maybe these are the ones that you should be focusing on. And it's just, in one way, makes it a bit easier and quicker to make the report, but also takes away sometimes a little bit of the bias because if you have just one person, you know, creating the report, if they might have not observed certain things that other colleagues observed. So they might not find it, they might not accurately portray that in the report. So in this way, they get a very well-rounded view of what happened, and then they can use their own expertise to put that into the context of learnings to move forward for the client. So yeah, I think that's quite useful. So we start getting to that point where it's kind of like, wow, I talk so much about how amazing AI is and all the things I can do for you in terms of exercises. But why isn't everyone using it? And I know that there's a lot of different organizations kind of like, trying out different things, but it isn't like a fully industry-wide thing that's been implemented really. So the reason for that, there's many layers to it, but I think the very top one is knowing where to start. We work in the oil and gas industry, we don't work in tech. So sometimes there's a lack of technical knowledge to even know where do we start because it's such a broad topic. When we think about software, traditionally we think about a specific software, a specific tool for a specific purpose, but AI applies to everything. So where do I even start, right? And once you do figure out, then you have to invest in tools. And if we're in our case, and I think the case with most people is that you try to go for something that is not only powerful and useful, but is also secure. And those cost money. And what also costs money and time is to upskill your people because AI is such a new thing, is such a new skill to have that most people don't actually know how to use it, at least properly, to be able to get the best outputs out of it. So you need to spend time upskilling your team so they can use it to their best. You might find as well that your company has policy restrictions. I think most organizations have very strict IT data security restrictions, legal restrictions. So you might be trying to implement something and find yourself hitting a bit of a wall there. And that usually has to do with the data security side of things. In our case, we try out and only fully implement and subscribe to enterprise level subscriptions that allows us the most highest level of data security that allows us to work within our own almost closed off network to avoid putting our data and our clients' data at risk. That's sort of like our OSRL commitment when it comes to AI. And finally, we have ethical considerations. And that's where a lot comes in. We have the loss of jobs, environmental impact, all sorts of things, which I'm actually going to show you a couple of examples because this is quite a broad part of the ethical bits. Here we have an example. These are real examples. And the example on the right, the screenshot, is something that happened to me and I took the screenshot. So for example, on the left, you have ChatGPT admitting on one of the chats that it was softening the language that a woman working in a corporation was inputting, just because it knew she was a woman and there was that bias in it that the language should not feel that it had authority. So it tried to soften her language in the output that it gave in her emails. In my case, I was creating something for our social media, and it assumed that our CEO at OSRL was a man rather than a woman, who was our case. So we always have to remember that AI, it feels like this magical rope, all-knowing being, but actually it's being programmed by human beings. Oh, sorry, my lights went off. Give me a second. That was very unexpected. Yeah, so you have to remember that AI is being programmed by humans, therefore it has human bias. So when we're talking about ethical considerations, we're not just talking about, Amazon announcing that it's going to fire thousands of people over the next year. We're also talking about the small little things like this, and that remind us that we do have to keep an eye, and that's why it is so important to actually review the content that AI gives you back. You can't just let it run and do its own thing. It's not going to do your job for you. It does need to have that human knowledge, the human expertise, and the human, like, critical thought to go with it. Another example is here on the left. You can see there was this big scam that happened recently where NVIDIA CEO was doing a live stream, massive live stream, where they were going to announce some updates of the company. And a group of hackers basically, in the hours leading up to the event, took over the links that gave access to that live stream and directed people to a different live stream, their own. But what they did that was quite smart was they used capabilities like the one that you just saw with that fake news report with like avatars. They copied the CEO's likeness and voice, and they fully recreated the live stream video to a certain extent to look like the real thing, only to be a video that was leading people into a crypto scam. So, like, really, really, they even did marketing material for it. They took it so deep, and that would have been so difficult to do if it wasn't for AI. So it can be used for evil too. And then here on the right is just an example of the environmental impact that using so much AI has, because obviously, it needs very powerful data centers and lots of them. So this was an image actually that one of our colleagues in the industry showed me at Interspill actually after my presentation, because I mentioned the environmental impact side of things. Here you see a snowstorm over Virginia, and in that specific place where you see the blue snowstorm, there's that hole in the middle that's green. That's a literal hole in the snowstorm caused from the heat that comes up from the data centers that kind of dissipated the snowstorm in that region. So quite a lot to think about here. And for me, the point is that at the end of the day, AI is not gonna, it has the bad things too, and there's a lot to consider when you're trying to implement it. It's not just about, running with it and just let it, get everyone to just play with it and see what happens. No, I think it has to be really well thought. We need to take into consideration the risks, and also, like, when it comes to the environment, I think try to use it for the things that actually make an impact, not just for every single task that we can think of. And I think I learned early on, I was quite lucky to go do a training where they taught us almost like a matrix, where you take a project and you put it into very small tasks and you kind of analyze which ones are the ones where AI actually adds value, or the ones that I'm just using AI just for the sake of it. So I think it's always worth asking yourself. I just wanted to finish with a little bit of an example from OSRL, where if, like ourselves, you might find yourself in an organization that might be a little bit risk adverse, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate policy restrictions and data security, as well as where to implement AI to align with business goals. At OSRL, we decided to go with a working group, and it's been very successful so far. Basically, we created a working group that focuses on automating repetitive tasks, freeing up time for more higher impact activities, enhancing data management, creating tools that allow different departments to collaborate a little bit better, also support digital transformation throughout the business, support adopting licenses in AI and other technology that supports the businesses, and just basically getting work done to then help understand what works, what doesn't work, and what the strategy should be moving forward. Basically, we're learning by doing. But I think the cool way that we found to balance risk as well has been, we have our membership group, which has representatives from all the company that kind of bring their voice into what their department would benefit from. But we also have a governance group, so people at a more senior level that represent legal department, IT, risk management, all this sort of stuff that can also bring their insight and say, this is okay to do, this is a little bit risky, this doesn't really align with our business strategy, so that we're not just throwing things at the wall and see what sticks. We're actually doing it as a unified front and supporting each other and finding what works and what adds value to our company. So yeah, if you're struggling a little bit to knowing where to get started, I think this could be a good start for you. It works for us, so yeah. When it comes to the future, I think the immediate future of AI lies in agents. And when I say future, it's happening right now. So we are already working on it. So I hope you're getting the chance to play with it as well. But when we talk about agents, what that means is, your good old ChatGPT, for example, that you go into a chat and you talk to it and you ask it questions, you have to always give it a context for what you're talking about. With an agent, you basically pre-train it without needing to code it, just with natural language, to do a specific task. So, I created one when I needed for a project that was a specialist in writing case studies in OSRL style, for example. So every time you go in, you just have to put a very simple request in, and already it's been automated to do it in a particular way. So this just ensures that people throughout your entire organization are working to a certain standard. The data is centralized in one place where everyone can access it easily, not like a massive SharePoint where documents are lost forever and no one can find them anymore. And just more efficiently because you don't have to waste so much time doing those initial steps every time. Yeah, we're now at a stage through our experience, our experimentation, through the working group, and now with agents to try baby steps still. So not much to share on that, but try and bring AI automation and agents into the operational side of things, which I think is the exciting next step for us. Yeah, that was pretty much it, but just quickly before we get into questions, if you want to hear a little bit more about what we've been doing and future trends and all this other side of AI, this one's a bit more focused on exercises. OSRL just put out a podcast episode where I talk a little bit more about that, so you can access it through the QR code that you see there. And yeah, you can always email me or find me on LinkedIn, so we can have a chat about it too. But yeah, that was pretty much what I had to say on the topic.
Ines, I've got a couple of questions which have come up.
Yeah.
How do you create your images? What software do you use, or do you just need a ship? I need a ship which is on fire. How do you create your images?
Yeah. So we use the system that we use here at OSRL is Copilot. We are a
Oh,
Microsoft.
Copilot.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are a
Microsoft.
Microsoft organization.
Yeah.
So we use Copilot 365.
Yeah.
So we basically it has the capability to create
Mhm.
images. And if you have the premium membership, which we have quite a few licenses here at OSRL, it really allows you to create basically like unlimited images, really. How I would say, the thing to keep in mind when creating images is your prompt. And this might be a little bit challenging if you don't come from a visual design background. But when you're asking Copilot to create, or any other tool to create your images, you write your prompt in natural language in a chat like you would normally. You have not just to say, I want a ship on fire. You have to tell it the type of vessel, the size of the fire, the source of the fire, what exactly is on fire. What is the state of the sea? Is there waves? Is there a storm? Is the sky gray? What is the perspective that you're taking the image from? Is it a photo that you took from a vessel at sea level? Or are you in a helicopter taken from above? So these are all things that you need to think about because the more detail you give the tool, the more the image will look like what you want it to look. You can also, if it's a very specific vessel or any other like technical thing, you can feed it also images. So you can say, I want a vessel like this one, or even like the name of it, and so that the tool also knows exactly the type that you want. If you have trouble creating prompts for this, you can actually ask Copilot, create me a prompt to create an image, and this is vaguely what I want. And you write it in your own like language, like bullet point kind of things. and then it creates a very nice prompt for you that Copilot understands really well. You feed that back in and ask to create an image. So that's my recommendation.
Cool. A couple of other things. Um, are you using AI to identify improvements within OSRL?
To identify improvements as in,
Improvements, operational
yeah.
efficiency improvements, that sort of thing. And how does
So
that really work?
So that's what we're using the group for, the working group. So we're basically bringing all these representatives
Yeah.
from the whole company. And what we're asking them to do is because they are in the action, they can speak to their team and they can identify what the pain points are, meaning what needs improvement.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we look into our current tools that we have within OSRL and think, okay, what tools do we have that can improve that particular process? And then reimagine a process with those new capabilities. So we're not really using AI per se to identify what's wrong. We're using our human knowledge and our human experience to identify what's wrong,
Yeah.
using AI to sort of fix it, and then using again our human knowledge to
Yeah.
bring it into the real world.
And just one thing, I understand that OSL is moving across to digital dashboards. And is AI being used to manage the volume of information that you get in an instant, sampling and air sampling, all the sampling that goes on,
Mhm.
but also is it also monitoring what's happening in social media index? So you within your digital dashboard you can see all the information about the incident, but you can also see the pain points from the public's point of view.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of relates a bit to what I was talking about earlier of
Mm.
preparedness being a very safe space
Yeah,
to start
yeah,
experimenting. When we start bringing into the real operations, I
mm.
think it becomes a little bit trickier,
Yeah,
not just from the data security side of things, but just from the real world impact that it might have. So I think that we're still at the stage of understanding how we can bring those tools into the operational side of things in a way that feels safe to do so,
yeah,
and in a way that we can still keep the human supervision,
yeah.
to make sure that everything is working the correct way. But I'm quite excited that we're getting to a stage now at OSRL where people are so confident in the work that we've done in preparedness that we're able to now start going into response and doing that work.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that is our next steps,
Yeah.
basically.
At OSRL, you talked about creating games effectively. Are you, what type of gamification are you using in your exercises?
So apart from this side of things where we try to make it quite engaging by adapting in real time, what we've done, the gamified experience side of things has been more for the many times in exercises, the first day will be focused on like refresher training, workshops, bits to kind of like refresh everyone's mind before you get into the actual exercise. So that's where the gamification has come a little bit more into play.
Mm.
So we've used it. Obviously, there's the experience that we have so many cool organizations using board games and stuff like this. I got to experience it here with Sea Alarm actually at OSRL, and it was really, really cool. We're trying to bring that experience
Mm.
into the digital world, so that we can also do it more remotely and kind of keep more people in the loop of the game, and also to keep records of it digitally of the results and the engagement. But we've used it, for example, for SCAT. So actually bringing people out into the field and having them play quizzes and games as they are on the field, because the game basically reflects the environment that they're looking at, and having to analyze the type of coast, the quality of the oil that they're observing, and all this sort of stuff, and kind of make it into a quiz format. And then you have a winner at the end, and he's the master of the scat, basically. It's weird. But also using it with we created like digital boards, like digital maps that reflect a particular area, for example. And we have assets basically on the side of the board. They will be response zones, there will be environmental sensitivities, they will be response techniques, and they just have it all on the side. And we have an entire team coming into the same board digitally and drawing on the board where the zones are, dropping the sensitivities where they are, and the response technique that they will use in each zone. So basically like a board game, but we use it digitally. And that's been quite cool to use too. I think one thing that maybe doesn't feel so much like gamification, but in this Jurassic Park inspired scenario that I told you about earlier, we had actually a digital common operating picture in the room, and that was like a live common operating picture. It was changing in real time as the team actioned certain things and achieved certain goals. The picture would change, and there was labels of everything, the different assets, the different teams, the different risks there were in the different areas. And an area that had a dinosaur that was loose would be all in red, and then when they action it and everything gets fixed, it goes green. And that visual impact of it really felt like a game as well. So little bits like that.
Fantastic. Right, if you stop sharing your screen now, what I'm going to do is then there's any more questions for Ines? You have got a genius sat in front of you.
Oh, wow.
That's you, not me. And you might. Is there anything that you want to ask Ines? So just far away. Any questions for Ines? You can all participate if you want. No? Okay. Right. So just quickly moving on. Ines, thank you very much indeed for that. That's great. We're going to see a lot more of this. We're going to keep coming back to AI and keep coming back to seeing developments, because there's no doubt from my experience that making the exercises real is essential if we're going to continue to build preparedness. And the beauty about it is that, in a sense, as you've demonstrated, you can create scenarios which people who are not in the same room can all be exercising with. And I think it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Now, and that is great. So thank you very much, Ines. Really appreciate it. I just want to let you know. Oh, yes. Somebody, Malik, I love that. Low sulfur fuel oil. Yeah, and alternative fuels. I'm going to come back to that, Ines, but I'm linking. That's a lovely segue into my next point. Malek and I were at the Imeros 2 closeout meeting last week in Malta, and it is fantastic to see a project which has been. There was Imeros 1 and now Imeros 2, but Imeros 2 approached it. Imeros 1 was hampered by COVID, but Imeros 2, because we're out of COVID, enabled lots of people to work together and particularly to work with manufacturers who are involved in supplying equipment which enables the mechanical recovery of very low sulfur fuel oil. And all of us in the industry understand that very low sulfur fuel oil is a different beast to the oils that we've been dealing with before. And I'm happy to say that the project has proved successful. They selected 5 manufacturers, Desmi, Lamore and Vicoma, who are all UK spill members. And there was also New Naval, and there was also COSEC. So they were the 5 manufacturers. They did trials which were funded by the project. They had to provide the equipment and all the rest of it, but it enabled them to develop and test in realistic situations how they would recover very low sulfur fuel oil. And this picture is some low sulfur fuel oil in a swirl tank at Cedra. But what the exercise, it has had a lot of success, and over the next few months there's going to be quite a lot of information will come out from the Norwegian Coastal Administration, Cedra, Transport Malta, who were the principals behind the project, and of course the excellent expertise that there is in the Belgian Coast Guard. So lots of information is going to come up. We want to capture that from the experience of our members. And so on the 9th of December at 1500 hours, there'll be a manufacturer's perspective and presentation of how they got on with the project, what solutions they came up with and how. And then in the new year, there'll be 3 more webinars, which are capturing some of the learnings which came out of that. Watch out also, because we are going to be going to be producing our responder competency by qualification scheme, which we will have webinars on, and anyone who is interested is welcome to join those as well. So Ines, without further ado, thanks a million. That was great. I really enjoyed it. I learnt a little bit. I wish I was younger. I could do so many good things with this.
Always in time.
But thanks for everyone who's joined us today. This is being recorded, so I will edit it out. We will do a little edit and we'll tidy it up. And it will be, everyone who's registered will get an email with a link to where it's shown. And please just cascade it around your organization, because there is so much that we can do with technology that's available. And Ines, thank you very much for unbundling it, making it more straightforward. And we'll see you next time.
Amazing.
Thanks very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Cheers, Ines.
Bye.